Thank you for having me, Beverly. And yes, the news did come home quite literally in the worst possible way this past week. My father, crushed as I am, I'm haunted by the image of ferrying him to hospital in a private ambulance. There's such a scrum. The health system is so under pressure right now that I had to organize a private ambulance to take him to an otherwise excellent hospital. And that ambulance ended up being a rickety old van which had an oxygen cylinder that did not work, a paramedic that did not exist, just a crew of one, a driver. So by the time my father reached the hospital, his oxygen levels had plummeted to a dangerous level. He was taken into ICU and he never made it back. Though this moment of loss is absolutely crushing for me, I want to say, Beverly, that my father was actually one of the lucky few. It sounds weird to say that because he died and he didn't make it back from the ventilator I had to take the awful decision to place him on. But at least I was able to provide him an ICU bed, a private hospital, and a team of excellent doctors. That is unlike the hundreds of thousands of Indians who are battling this catastrophe today outside the closed doors of emergency wards that do not even have oxygen. Forget drugs or forget other highfalutin treatment. They do not even have enough oxygen to be able to admit more patients. So while my father suffered and my heart broke with it, I am mindful that I was luckier than most, that my father had an opportunity to at least fight for his life for 5 days. And many Indians are dying not from COVID, but because the health system has been betrayed by a monumental series of policy mistakes, incompetence, callousness, ignorance, and even now, the wrong decisions.
So take us through what you believe, Barkha, in your reporting of this and what you've seen so consistently. What is the weakest point in the system right now?
The weakest point in the system is that it has been a fortnight of crisis wherein we cannot get oxygen to our hospitals. So, we aren't even at a stage where we can talk about vaccinations or border policies or mutant strains. We are grappling with survival. We have seen at least 5 incidents that I have personally reported on where we have lost patients in ICUs across cities in India, major cities, I'm not talking about villages, where the oxygen supply has been interrupted to hospitals. And you've seen in one night, 25 patients, 20 patients, 12 patients, sometimes in children's hospitals, sounding the SOS, hospitals taking to social networks saying, please give us oxygen. A court in India has now had to declare that the denial of oxygen to hospitals is equivalent to an act of genocide. That is the situation that we're dealing with, juxtaposed with the fact that at a time when our vaccines were the only way out of this pandemic, our government did not purchase enough vaccines to see us through this period. It misunderstood, misread the second wave. It gifted away and exported vaccines instead of ordering vaccines for our own people. And so our vaccination rates are at its lowest levels ever in this period when they need to be the highest. These two twin catastrophes are simply meaning that people are dying on the streets, literally on the streets, and places of worship like Gurudwaras, which is a Sikh place of worship, have now had to start what are called oxygen langars. Langar is a Hindi word for a banquet where you feed the hungry. Instead of feeding food to the hungry, we are now feeding oxygen to India's oxygen-starved citizens. This is the worst end of the world apocalypse that you can imagine. And it is all happening in an unprecedented emergency that I think our government is still not telling the truth to our citizens about.
And that's what I'd like you to focus on for us. Is there any sense that you're getting that the government, the central government understands the crisis? The Supreme Court might order that oxygen needs to be supplied, but if there is no scaling up this issue and organisation from within, will it ever be overcome? How do you see your way through this?
I'm personally calling for the military to take over the deployment, the logistics, the supply chains. I think we have watched the government do it and fail at it. We have watched an absence of coordination between the center and the federal governments. It has not happened. Every single doctor I have spoken to is saying that they are distraught. They did not sign up to be doctors, so that they had to go around hunting for oxygen cylinders and lose lives because oxygen was not available. I think the government has to acknowledge its failure and hand over the deployment and the crisis response to the military. That would be my personal opinion. I think we have waited long enough. We cannot play with the lives of Indian people anymore.
Barkha, you make it very real for us. We so appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Beverly.